Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Marvin's Musings. And hello, everybody, and welcome back to Marvin's Musings. Um, Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Marvin's Musings. Excuse me. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Marvin's Musings. Joining me as I sit here in a parking lot and charge my car, and I figured what better time to talk about. Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to Marvin's Musings. A few days ago, I came across a video from the channel The Duke of Middleville talking about the $2,000 or whatever mistake that many EV owners make, which boiled down to be a conversation about, charging, EV charging, and whether you truly need to install a level 2 charger at home or not, or if you could get away with regular 120 volt wall charging, essentially. And as someone who's had a EV for many years, I figured I might as well chime in. And what better time to do that than while I sit here at a EV charger? So I guess perhaps not bearing the lead, it's evident that I do not have charging at home, at least not level 2, or maybe it's not evident, but just putting that out front in the beginning, I do not have level 2 charging at home. I never have. We've owned this Nissan Leaf for a bit over 9 years at this point, and the range has, and it has the battery health to prove it. If you know, you know. Anyway, back to the conversation, which is about the practicality or potential to use an EV if you don't have home charging, or if you don't have level 2 home charging more specifically. And I think basically it in the video, it was boiled down to the point of, if you have the ability to drive about 50 miles per day max in a fairly efficient EV, then it can last for you on just using the wall outlet. But if you drive something like maybe a Hummer EV and you're driving at 80 miles a day, you're gonna need you're gonna need to have a level 2 installed to be able to take full advantage of or you would benefit most from having a level 2 installed, if so that you can charge at home. And I would I would not disagree on that general premise that it is doable via home charging. And several scenarios presented were, what if you did home charging, but let's say you used a less efficient EV, like maybe not a Hummer EV, but like you had say like a what's it called, the F-150 Lightning, for example, and you're maybe driving 60 miles a day. So it charges most of it overnight, but you get to the point where probably like once or twice a week, as was posited, you would benefit from stopping by like a fast charger or something. But I think one case scenario that was kind of missing would be the scenario where you have available level 2 charging for other places in your life. So like, let's say there's a library down the street or whatever, and they have a level 2 charging, or your office, maybe offers some level 2 charging on site or whatever, or your favorite grocery store nearby. It's kind of the same opportunity case kind of as DC fast charging as was presented in that video, but obviously level 2 is slower than DC fast charging. So maybe in the DC fast charging on many cars, you're going from, you could get a session from 20 to 80% or whatever, and then it would be at home, you could get to 100% on your wall outlet cord. Um, but you know, if and that's maybe like a 20-30 minute stop once or twice a week. But if you're not on a road trip, maybe a DC fast charger stop isn't always the most convenient. Now, I know there are expanding opportunities. For example, recently by my office, actually, they did install, installed about a year ago, a destination charger and supercharger, and then they recently installed the Electrify America chargers. Um, I did actually put out a video of that site a few weeks ago when it was still under construction. I didn't go by it for a couple of weeks because in that video I'm referencing, I had mentioned that the destination chargers were free, and then right after that time they turned on the charging function on them, or the charge function on them, so they are no longer free, which is a bummer, a downside, from that standpoint of getting free charging, but also because they are not showing up on the Tesla app, so I can't even turn them on, even with the pay. So that's really why I haven't been down there more so than, I mean, the free part it would be nice, but wasn't crucial. The crucial part is that they are at least usable, and they are not at the moment for me. So anyway, aside from that, and actually that kind of brings up part of the point though, which is that, I don't know of much level 2 or of free DC fast charging. I know sometimes maybe some of the networks run promotions or whatever, or some of the older Teslas had free DC fast charging, free supercharging for life, and I don't know what kind of promotions some of the OEMs are doing now with the new sales, to be quite honest. But I do know of still lingering, the networks or lack of networks, but there used to be, especially when we first got this car, there were a whole bunch of places around the area that had just like a level 2 charger sitting outside, and it was free to use for everyone. Predictable results in some cases where, once the cable got cut or whatever, the site owner wouldn't maintain it. In other cases, they have since been upgraded or changed to a networked charger. In some cases, they're still free. In many cases, they're no longer free. But that certainly is a helpful opportunity as well, for those who are maybe considering it. It would be my recommendation would be to download the PlugShare app or just go to the PlugShare website and start punching in the address or the location of some of your favorite hangout spots or whatever, your haunts, that you currently spend time on in your life, and see what charging opportunities are available nearby. And I would say not just to see what charging opportunities are available in terms of seeing if there's a pin on the map, but actually click on that pin and see if there are comments and check-ins within the last couple the last couple weeks or months or whatever, and just generally the PlugShare score, because I know there are some pins that maybe are outdated, or you get to the site and you realize that the last check-in was a year ago, and so you get to the site and you're sure the charger's still there, but it's no longer operational or whatever the case may be. But so yeah, if you're gonna, even if you're not even if this is not applicable to you, still download PlugShare app, take a look around. I've even been able to use it to find like some private charging in cases, like I said, I do own a first generation Leaf with the battery health approved, so I have had to use it fairly liberally in the past. Nowadays with the battery health, I would, you could say, know the limitations, and I just don't drive to many places in the first place, because I know, not with this car, because I know it's just not going to be, especially now that with the battery health, is averages out to be almost as fast as bike, or almost slower than biking at this point, if I have to stop and charge and before I can continue on. That was even the case prior, like over the because this car, I guess it's important to note that this one does not have DC fast charging, does not have the CHAdeMO port. So I have never been able to fast charge. It is thankfully the advanced package or whatever they want to call it, quote unquote advanced package, and so that means it does have the 6.6 kilowatt charger max. I did have someone, and she had a early Bolt as early Leaf as well, but without the package. So her max charge rate was 3.3 kilowatts, and it had no DC fast charging. So for practical purposes, these cars get like what 3.5, 4 miles per kilowatt hour. So that was 12 miles per hour max of recharge on that car. This one has about 24 miles per hour max of recharge. And so, and so that's actually a decent standpoint, or from the standpoint of, recharging while you're doing something. That's pretty decent. And many of the newer cars I know have some think like the Bolt, for example. First gen Bolt I think had 7.2 kilowatts, so that's even, if I was in here, that was like 29 miles per hour. I know some of the newer cars are like 9 kilowatt, 11 kilowatt. Saw someone installing their Lucid charger recently. I believe that was 80 amp, which worked out to something like 15 or 16 kilowatt, which is crazy actually. I remember back in the day there was a company that was selling a home DC fast charger that was 16 kilowatts. So it's ludicrous, honestly, to think of that now. That's the onboard charger on some of these cars. Although, and the Lucid is like the most, the most efficient, one of the most efficient EVs. So, 16 kilowatts, and it's getting like 4.5 kilowatt hours, or 4.5 miles per kilowatt hour times 16. That's 64 miles per hour. It's recharging. It can recharge the entire, almost the entire range capacity of this car. Or honestly, that it would recharge more than the range of this car in practice in an hour is actually a mind-boggling consideration. But yeah, so if you have the opportunity, I would say, to add to the conversation, as this was mentioned, the addition to the conversation is to consider level 2 opportunities as well. Again, DC fast charging continues to expand, and that's great. I have watched the rollout of the DC fast charger network over the last decade or so, and so it's good to see it rolling out. But I have shared I think as several other videos I've seen on the topic, and even just plenty of EV owners I think have come to understand. DC fast charging is great. It's useful, but it's not everything. And there's certainly a location for level 2, like the resources, or in terms of like demand resource that it takes to have like maybe like 5-10 DC fast chargers, all doing 350 kilowatts each. Even if we say they're shared or whatever, you're pulling in a pretty big transformer, and so that has certain implications and as well, and so whereas you could take a DC fast charger that's 350 kilowatts or whatever, and that's 50 level 2s at 7.2 kilowatts, or just about, and so you could maybe have a base with 4 cords, and then that splits, and then now you have a 350 that's split into, what's that, 90 each max, if up to 4 people are using it, or who knows. I know they have some of the newer DC fast charger opportunities have various softwares and tricks, and they work differently and can split it and prioritize and do all kinds of tricks like that, which is great. We love to see it, but at the same time, you've put in one DC fast charger and it's charging maybe 4 cars at a time, or we can have level 2 chargers, for 50 cars at a time. And it depends on the use case really. Like if we're at McDonald's, sure, it makes sense to have the, 4 cars at a time, or Denny's or IHOP or something like that. Waffle House, I think it's starting to build out a network. Who knows? You know, maybe like the sit down restaurants are, almost kind of on the edge case, honestly, of for the high power DC fast chargers. They're definitely on the edge of not of being a poor fit. They certainly would fit well on the fast chargers that um they certainly fit well for fast chargers and cars that could use like the 15 to 30 minute stop. But sit down restaurant, you get into 45, 60, 90 minute stops. Unless you're driving Tesla semi or Windrows or something, or a big truck. You're not sitting at that, or the Van Hool had a J45E, I believe, electric intercity touring bus type vehicle. But if you're putting a battery that size, then you're sitting for 90 minutes maybe at a DC fast charger. But maybe you're in a EV6 or something, and you're 20-25 minutes in. That's not a sit down restaurant time usually. And I guess that kind of brings me kind of not full circle, but back to the installation by my office. It's in a shopping center with an Aldi, a Target. There's a gym, a bunch of fast food restaurants, a quick quack car wash. Obviously you can't charge while going through the car wash. But there are a bunch of restaurants, and I would say that installation is both from the supercharger standpoint and the Electrify America standpoint is a pretty decent installation. A quick trip through Aldi can be 15 to 30 minutes, and maybe stretch to 35. So Target, you maybe spend a little more time there. But and then the gym, of course, there's a gym. So I see a lot of people already actually do come plug in and then go hang out at the gym for hour, 2 hours. And so I think that's a good and unmentioned opportunity. If you have level 2 nearby, just take a look at PlugShare and see if that's an option. If it's near your work or somewhere else you're already currently going your life, or see what kind of, maybe there's one that's not necessarily at a place you currently go, but it's what's out there. So you don't have to rely on it all the time. But let's say it's at like the park, for example, and so you do the wall plug every night. But once a week, spend 20 minutes at the 2 hours at the park and start doing that and add that to your life. Or you already go to the park, but you switch parks when you go, switch which parks you go to. And maybe take that as an opportunity to also pester your local city or whatever to install chargers at the park where you already frequent. And I guess the final point I would bring up, and it's not a detriment per se, but it's a consideration. The big thing, and it's more of a consideration for me since my Leaf has like no range at this point, as compared to if you're driving a newer EV, and let's say you're driving a Mach-E or whatever. And so the big issue I run into is that because my range is so low, that it has to charge essentially by the time I get home. Or so the big issue is that you can't do like quick trips like back and forth or to something extra or whatever very easily. You end up in a, not stuck per se, but if you have a low mileage EV, those of us who own these cars know the limitations of our cars. I'm not going to try to drive this thing to San Diego, for example, from where I live, because I know I have to charge 4 times on the way to get there, or more, right? So obviously I'm not going to drive this car to San Diego. So if if I have a newer EV with like 300 miles of range, I'll drive it to San Diego, and I'm not anxious about that. I just know I can't drive this car to San Diego. It's just not suited for that task. Um, so I guess in the future I could also expound on that topic with another video on range anxiety, but I think that's kind of the crux of it. I'm not anxious. I know the limitations of the car. It's not going to make it San Diego. It might make it to LA. It might make it to Palm Springs, for example. But but that's what I know. So I'm not going to try to drive it in those situations. Or if I do, I plan appropriately, as in make sure I know where I'm going to charge. But it really is tedious. And so I just don't do it. But what happens is that, and this is more an issue for these low mileage EVs that are quickly becoming rare at this point. I would say the Leafs are becoming rare yet, at least not here in California. There's still plenty of them running around, and people like me, we know limitations, so we drive them where it makes sense, and we don't where they don't make sense. But especially the newer crop of EVs don't really have the same level of range problem. So the issue I'm about to bring up is not quite the same, which is that what really happens is that you end up like you can't. It's harder to make quick trips that add, and so like I get home, maybe I have 20%, but I need to have 100% in the morning, right? So if I have to make another trip that uses up 15%, even if it's like later and like it's charged back to 35%, 40% by the time, if I take that little trip that's usually 15-20%, now I'm back down to 20%, and it might not be charged in the morning. So the big thing, and I would say it's even a bigger issue, if you want to call it that, from the standpoint of a plug-in hybrid owner. And again, my other vehicle is a plug-in hybrid, which is ironic that the plug-in hybrid and this car now kind of have about the same range of usable electric range. But that's maybe a topic for another day. I guess technically I can go a little farther, but excuse me, in this car, but for kind of practical purposes, it kind of is even out at this point, which says a lot about this car more than that car. But anyway, again, off into another tangent. What I was saying is that, especially from the standpoint of a PHEV owner, well, I know there's a lot of research that a lot of PHEV owners don't even plug in their hybrids in at home, or like at all in the first place. I do plug in my PHEV, which is why I'm charging here now at a charging station, because the PHEV is actually at home charging right now too. And so, and that's the other situation for sure. If you're in a 2 EV household, the 110 charging solution is not going to work that well. And so, at that point, you definitely want to have the charger installed, even if it's on. You only want to run it one at a time. You could come home, plug one car in, or plug them both in. It depends on how your rates are set up and everything. Who knows? Maybe you are able to, you have 2 chargers and then it splits them, the output into 2 chargers. Maybe you can manage to run 2 chargers off the one circuit. Like, let's say you have that same, instead of putting one Lucid plug in, you can run 2 40 amp plugs off the same circuit, for example, and then you could charge 2 EVs. The only thing would be, or you could have 2 EVSCs, 2 chargers on the wall, and then you don't have to worry about running outside and missing or forgetting to run outside and switch it. It depends on your setup. I think it would probably not be, if you're already getting like some chargers hardwired in. I know some people will balk at saying this, but you could probably find some decent. I'll put it this way: there are some charging infrastructure on Amazon and similar sites that are competitively priced. They have a lot of reviews. Whether you are willing to trust your EV with that or not, I know some people have. There are some horror stories about some of these EVSEs. I would say for sure check it, make sure it's EUL listed or whatever, and stuff like that. But you know, you could get one of those for 150, 200 bucks, and you know, you hardwire, or you get a either hardwire install, or you get a you know, you get two boxes for like maybe like 1450 boxes, and you could have the wire. So if you're able to, instead of running one Lucid charger or whatever, you could just plug two in to 1450s, for example, or two 40 amp chargers. But anyway, you know, that's kind of getting ahead of myself or off topic. But I would say for sure it definitely becomes less doable in a multi EV household, especially if you are in an apartment, which is my situation. I would say it'd be more doable if you're in a two EV household and each EV is able to have its own 110 plug, or you know, maybe one EV you have one of those things that splits a dryer plug, and then one plugs on one and one plugs to the other. So like you basically, it's I would not recommend a two EV household to apartment people who cannot charge at home. Like technically my like, you know, for years I didn't even charge at home with my current location setup, because there really the charging I do at home is I just run the cord out the front door. For years I didn't want to do that, but you know, as time has gone on, I said, you know, whatever, I'll just do it. And so now that's what it's done. But I would definitely say that if you're gonna have multiple EVs, that the 110 is not going to be a very optimal solution for your situation, because you will, I wouldn't say it's not optimal. I will say it depends on the EVs, and the situation you find yourself in. It's I will agree. I will amend that to say it is not optimal, but it is not impossible. You know, I would not try to have a two EV household with two Leafs, like two current or two first gen Leafs, for example, with all, and both of them have like 40 miles of range left, which 30 miles of range left, right? I would not. Let me adjust this light. So I want you guys to, sure you guys want to see me, but I don't want to be blinded, right? Do I even need it? We'll find out soon, right? Sorry, I forgot to bring like all my filming equipment. Which is a reminder, if you think you yourself do need some filming equipment, feel free to hit up any of the links in the description or the pinned comment, and you know, you could get you a light, a mic. You know, I got one of those cheap $20 mics, and like I said, I didn't use it, didn't bring it, but it's, even though it's not a high priced item, and it definitely does improve the filming quality over just a bare camera on the phone, especially in situations where you have like background noise. So, you know, if you just buy one, $20, you can throw it in your, which is how I do it. I just throw it in a bag, and usually it's there with me. I just didn't bring the bag right now, so but you can even almost just throw it in your pocket and have it all the time. It charges USB-C, and it connects on iPhone or Apple, or what's it called, Lightning connector, USB-C, and just like the eighth or whatever, the 3/8 or whatever plug. Anyway, it's a pretty useful gadget for what it is and what it does and what it costs. So it's not sponsored by them or anything, but if you have the opportunity, pick one up. And anyway, yeah, like I was saying, it's not optimal if you have a multi-EV household if you're only on 110, but I think it is doable, depending on the car and your mileage I would say that if you have a mileage, a daily mileage in the range of what was mentioned in that original video, like maybe 40 to 50 miles a day per car, um, or total for sure, but even per car, it depends on the car and the other opportunities. But basically, as long as you have other opportunities to regularly have other opportunities away from home to charge, at least on level 2, I think you can get away with it. Because let's say you have like a Bolt and a Mach-E, right? Or a Bolt and a EV6, or maybe let's keep in the same family, right? EV6 and a Ionic, right? Um, so both of those get over 200 miles range. You have 40 miles of daily use for one, and 52 for the other, right? Or 40 or 50. And so one day you plug in. Well, I would say the one I guess the more daily use should probably get plugged in more, but also that one is more beneficial to find off-site charging. So maybe that one is the one that is driven to the location, or shopping, and there's a like the shopping, like the Walmart, all the Walmart getting DC fast charging, for example. So you stop by Walmart and you DC fast charge, or you stop by the park or the library, and even if see, the thing about the level 2 is that it's just so insanely faster, right? So basically with level 2 you get, it depends on if you're going with the really old Leafs, you're getting 3 times this charging speed of wall plug, to apparently like 10 to 15 times on the newest cars. Like some of them are like 3.3, 6.6, 7.2, like I think 8 point something, 9, 6, 11 something. I think it's one's 11 kilowatts. I think it's like what Teslas and like some BMWs and stuff were charging at now, 16 kilowatts or whatever in the Lucids and stuff like that. So just from that standpoint, you're in the situation where, and you could plug in the, even if you plug in for like 30-45 minutes DC fast charging time, you've cut 4 or 5 hours out of charging time at home. And so obviously it doesn't deliver the same amount of power, amount of energy in that time period as you get out of a DC fast charger, but it's still multiples of what you get at home. And so that could certainly augment home charging. So I would say that situation is not, it is only a critical situation if you have low mile or low range EVs. If you have decently range EVs, which it should be most EVs built from the last 10 years, or maybe not 10 years, for sure pretty much everything in the last 5 years is going to be model year 2020, 2021, 22 or above, or except for I think the i3 was still available in the early part of that, but I would not include it, and maybe not the 500e. But most of the new crop to hit the road in recent years, which is now coming off lease, right? If you pick up 2 EVs, you're going to be in a situation where you can make it work, but not if you are regularly draining the battery, and if you are able to charge off site from the home location at any point, like any of that charging that's faster than level 1, that faster than wall plug, will be beneficial. I mean, within reason, obviously, especially on some of these networks. Like recently, ChargePoint has been charging me 25 cent like activation fee, and so I'm not gonna, maybe there are some situations in the past where I would go to a charger and be there for like 10-15 minutes because I need a little bit of charge to get home. And so I know how efficient the car is, and 15 minutes at the charger, that's about 1.5 kilowatt hours of energy that's been transferred. So, I know it's, whatever, despite whatever the gasometer is showing me on the dash, that I just added 1.5 kilowatt hours to the battery. So it should be able to, go, like 3 or 4 miles, which is, I have 2 miles to go, right? So, that kind of math. But I don't expect most people to want to live their life with that level of excitement. And so you're not going to stop for 15 minutes at a 25-cent activation fee. But, you will stop and activate. If it's free, there's no activation fee and just charge it for an energy, or even better, has free energy. Or if you're going to stop for 2 hours then. So you spread the activation fee out over, at least stop for an hour. So then you spread the activation fee out over an entire, hour. So that's like 4 cents a kilowatt hour over 1 hour. It drops to 2 cents a kilowatt hour over like 2 hours worth of charging. And, I think many chargers, they're limited to 4 hours, right? So then that basically would round out to 1 cent a kilowatt hour on, something that took 24 kilowatt hours worth of charge. And so that's reasonable. But yeah, if you have multiple EVs in your house, it's not impossible to still rely on 110. But I would definitely say it is not preferred, and you kind of can't make it. It's not usable if you're driving standard ranges and you have a low mileage EV. If you're in a situation where everyone works from home or whatever, is retired or something, and is just going out to Lions Club or to Denny's or bingo or church or whatever once or twice a week, 2 low mileage EVs or 2 no range EVs on a 110 is not going to be the worst use case you would find, especially at these current gas prices. Like I said, I get free charging. I rest my case, right? But at the current gas prices, if you don't have a lot of driving to do, you work from home or whatever and stuff, you're home often, and you're not driving that much in the first place, get the low mileage EV and just put whichever one to charge that is in use at that time. Even then you could do it, but you can't be driving 50, 60 miles each EV per day on 110 unless you have the ability to charge. And I think that's the bigger issue would run into, is that you would have the space to physically charge 2 EVs at the same time, but maybe your circuits aren't set up to handle 2 chargers at the same time. And then if you go through to change the circuits around, or like, maybe it's doable to split. You know what, I'm not an electrician, I'm not going to opine in that, and I'm sure it's, in some cases it's doable in the box, and other cases you have to run a new conduit and stuff. If you have run a new conduit, I presume that it's not going to not be worth your money to at least to do a level 2 of some fashion, even if you can't do a Lucid level 2 of 16 kilowatts. You can't do that. That's understandable. But if you're excuse me, yeah, so I would understand that most people probably don't have the extra space in their circuit, right? Their entire household circuit for a Lucid install. But if they did, more power to them. But at the same time, if you would have to do some work to be able to run 2 chargers in a garage, even just level 1, it kind of quickly, excuse me, it just tends to quickly migrate into territory of, if you're going to run 2, if you're going to spend the money to run this, to make this run, to install a charger, why would it only, or to be able to use a charger, why would you spend that money and all that time and effort and only make it a level 1? I mean, in some cases there are some good answers to that query, which are namely that it's all the board can support without being upgraded, and so you know if you don't want to upgrade the whole panel, that's certainly a conversation that's worth having, or upgrading the service even to the building. That's certainly consideration as well. But in general, I think the question would just kind of linger out there. It's like spending this money to make a run to install a charger or make a charger usable. Why is it the slowest charging option? And the cost of materials is going to be a negligible, and even the labor at that point is negligible. But in it, like the difference. So why not spring for faster, right? So anyway, I guess I probably have rambled on quite a bit at this point. Who knows if this even came out? I'm shooting it on my cell phone in the car, as you can see. I'm in the car. I don't know how it looks really, because I wasn't even able to really set it up properly. I did the best I could in terms of mounting it and pointing it at myself and pressing start, I hope. But we will see. And yeah, with that, I think that kind of sums it up. The use case that was really missing from the video was level 2 charging opportunities, whether they are at work or at shopping centers or whatever. They are not, and obviously it's not quite the same as DC fast charging, although in some cases it's also not quite as expensive. So I honestly, I've never DC fast charged. I don't know what the prices are. I've seen the Tesla app or PlugShare, 50, 60 cents a kilowatt hour in some cases. So that's 10 kilowatt hours. You're already $6, and you have to do 30 kilowatt hours. That's $20. So I think, like I said, that that's $30 a month or maybe a week for some DC fast charging. Not terrible, I guess. That if you were doing, like, the charger I'm sitting on now is, I think it's 32 cents a kilowatt hour, so 30 kilowatt hours here is like $9. If you and if you have cheaper home charging at home, but that's kind of irrelevant in this instance, in this specific use instance. But anyway, let's say you were you hit some of the fabled free chargers. That's free even. So it just varies. It's possible to get different cost structures, but you should do your own research for sure. It is not hard to do the research. Again, I'd recommend the PlugShare app as the best place to do research on EV charging. I know that all the charging companies have their own apps. Trust me, I have them too. Many of them, even the Tesla app. Yes, even though I don't own a Tesla, but it certainly is possible. But there are some limitations. But I would say the level 2 opportunity is the biggest one that was that was not really explored very much in that video from the Duke of Middleville. And anyway, with that, I guess I could say I would say I've rambled on for quite a bit, and who knows, I might even retake this and touch it up, depending on how it sounds. But that has been Marvin and Marvin's Musings with another EV adventure. Feel free to hit the like, comment, subscribe button, and stay tuned for more. Thanks for joining.